Hi, my name is Aditya Sonparote and I'll be talking about India's unemployment and jobless growth. So, as we all know, India's GDP has grown at one of the fastest rates in the world, yet its employment elasticity, which is at which the growth converts into jobs, has fallen sharply. 2023, India's economy had expanded by around 7%, but unemployment stood above 16%, which is really high. So, this is the central paradox we are trying to understand here: growth without jobs. So, jobless growth is a term coined in economics to describe periods where output rises without a commensurate rise in employment. India's employment elasticity, which measures created per unit of GDP growth, declined from approximately 0.44 in 1980s to near 0.01 in the 2010s. The labor force participation rate, particularly among women, also remains one of the lowest at around 24%. So the problem is not uniform. It affects youth, women, and rural proportions in a very different ways, offering only seasonal, sometimes uh, unsecured work. So, as a result for this, three structural barriers are most frequently cited. First, the labor market rigidities, which is the Industrial Disputes Act, historically discouraged firms above a certain size from hiring permanent workers, incentivizing capital intensive production over the labor intensive production. Second, the skilling gap. A majority of the works lacks industry relevant skills, which we can see everywhere, and creating a mismatch between the supply of labor and employer demand. Now, the third, the agrarian trap, which is over 40% of the work remains engaged in agriculture, which contributes to almost less than, which contributes to around 15% of GDP, which is really less. A structural underemployment that persists partly due to absence of viable manufacturing opportunities. So the problem traces back to the 1991 liberalization, which opened markets but failed to reform factor markets, land and labor, that would have enabled labor intensive manufacturing to scale. So, in order to tackle this, addressing jobless growth requires a coordinated policy response, which could be rationalizing labor laws to reduce the cost of formal hiring, scaling up target skilling programs aligned to more industry needs, and investing in MSMEs. This is not merely an economic challenge, it is a question of whether India's growth story becomes one of prosperity or exclusion. That question makes this issue a rather very important and urgent issue that should not be ignored.